Hi class, welcome to Module 5, where you're going to be learning about middle and late childhood. In this module, you'll be learning about physical development during middle and late childhood. You'll learn about the changes in the brain, the benefits of sports, and some of the causes and effects of obesity. You'll also be learning about cognitive development during this stage of life. You'll learn about information processing, language development, and you'll be learning about many different theories of intelligence. You'll also be learning about socio-emotional development. You'll learn about Erikson's theory. As you'll remember, Erikson is a very significant personality theorist, and he suggests that we go through a series of 8 stages of psychosocial development. So you'll be learning about the stage of development that he says that kids at this age go through. You'll also learn about self-esteem and peer and family relationships. Although I've divided this module into 3 parts or 3 videos, what I encourage you to do as you think about physical development and cognitive development and socio-emotional development is to remember that these are not separate domains that function on their own, that these domains, physical, cognitive, and socio-emotional development, interact with one another. So let's go ahead and get started. During the elementary school years, children grow steadily and their motor skills continue to improve. We'll be tracing these changes in this part of our module. So what will you be learning about? You'll be learning about the changes that are happening in the brain during this period of development. You'll also be learning about the positive effects of sports and some of the reasons that kids may not be participating in sports. You'll also be looking at some of the explanations for why children become obese, and you'll be learning about the longer term consequences and some of the interventions that can be helpful to help children to live healthy lifestyles. Physical growth during middle and late childhood continues at a steady pace. And 6-year-olds weigh about 45 pounds and is approximately 45 inches tall and they grow to be about 90 pounds and 60 inches by age 12. So that's a pretty significant amount of growth. So in other words, most children gain about 8 pounds and approximately 2 to 3 inches per year. Many children notice in particular that their elementary school children will outgrow shoes and pants more rapidly than they outgrow sweaters, shirts, or jackets. And this is because much of the increase in height comes from the legs and not the trunk. It's during this time that children experience a growth spurt. And for girls, this begins at around age 9. And for boys, this begins at around age 11. During this time, muscle strength and lung capacity increase, and the ability to engage in strenuous physical activity therefore improves. Elementary school children's greater size and strength contribute to improved motor skills that we continue to see in middle and late childhood. During these years, children steadily run faster and they jump farther. By the time children are about 11 years old, they can throw a ball 3 times farther than they could at age 6 and can jump nearly twice as far. Fine motor skills also improve as children move through middle and into late childhood. Children's greater dexterity is evident in a host of activities that range from typing and writing and drawing to working on puzzles to playing the piano and building model cars. Children gain much greater control over their fingers and hands, which makes them more nimble. This greater fine motor coordination is obvious in children's handwriting. As discussed in your textbook, there are sex differences in motor skill performance. So in both gross and fine motor skills, there are gender differences in performance levels. For example, girls tend to excel in fine motor skills. Their handwriting tends to be better than that of boys. Girls also excel in gross motor skills that require flexibility and balance, like tumbling. On gross motor skills that emphasize strength, though, boys usually have the advantage. Some of the gender differences in gross motor skills that require strength really reflect the fact that as children approach and enter puberty, girls' bodies have proportionately more fat and less muscle than do boys' bodies. This difference explains why, for example, boys can hang by their hands or arms from a bar much longer than girls can. However, for other gross motor skills like running, throwing, and catching, body composition is less important. In these cases, children's experience is crucial. So, for example, during recess, elementary school girls are often found playing on a swing set, jumping rope, or perhaps talking in a group. In contrast, boys are playing football or shooting baskets. Many girls and their parents believe that sports and physical fitness are less valuable for girls than they are for boys, and consequently, girls spend less time in these sports and fitness related activities than boys, which deprives them, for those parents who have those beliefs, that deprives them of opportunities to practice that are essential for developing motor skills. We'll be looking at the benefits of sports for both boys and girls. During middle and late childhood, the frontal lobes become more developed, and this is especially true during ages 10 through 12. This results in improvements in logic and planning, attention, and memory. You're also going to see that there is increased myelination in specific areas that are related to information processing. And so this increases reaction time, and it also increases information processing speed. Myelination is also happening in the hippocampus. And if you'll remember, the hippocampus transfers information from short-term to long-term memory. So you're going to see some improvements in memory during this stage of development. So we know that playing sports is so good for kids. So why are we seeing that some children don't participate in sports? Well, I just want to speak for a moment from some of my own personal observations. My children play soccer. Now, granted, they're still in early childhood. They're 8 years of age. But I have often heard parents say things like, I know you're going to win today, or I've heard parents coaching their children before the events, and I've seen many kids in tears after events. And I've also seen some kids who are in complete meltdown mode because they feel like they haven't measured up to what their parents have wanted them to be doing. Now, much of what I've seen hasn't been among the children who are in early childhood. When my kids play, they're playing at a soccer field or complex where there are kids of multiple ages who are playing on different fields. So much of what I've heard is coming from the parents of older kids. But I can imagine the pressure that many kids are feeling. And so I have to think that that must contribute to why some kids who maybe had been playing sports choose to stop playing sports. And as the authors of your textbook point out, too much competition and athletic skill can decrease interest, and that not having fun is the most common reason for dropping out. I'd also like to point out that not all kids, as many of you know, have equal access to sports. We see an unequal distribution of gender. We see boys more often being encouraged to play sports than girls. Of course, we know that girls are often encouraged, but if we look at the statistics, we consistently see that boys more frequently participate in organized sports than girls do, even though we know that the benefits are numerous for girls. And then also there's socioeconomic status. When kids get involved in playing sports, there can be many different costs associated with playing the sport. That cost can include things like registration fees, the cost of uniforms if that team doesn't have a sponsor. Also, such things as costs getting to and from wherever the child is practicing, things that some of you may take for granted. So we may take for granted that we can get from point A to point B pretty easily, but for people who are struggling, which many people are today, that can be a pretty big task when we're thinking about the cost of gas or having reliable transportation. Also, when we think about parents who may have been working multiple jobs to support their family, it may be difficult for them to get their children to sports and help them to, to get to practice and to do the things that they see other parents are doing, and they may feel that pressure. So we need to think about what we can do as a community to help make sure that all children have access to playing sports. And we can think about things that schools can do so that schools who are perhaps like elementary schools, for example, middle schools, that by having practice after school on school grounds, that could be very helpful. I know that there are some issues related to that because we can think about coaches and their availability. But if we think about after school care programs and then following that with practice, that could be helpful. But there are some creative ways that we can think about helping to make sure that more kids have access to participation in sports. The reason I say elementary or middle schools is that, especially elementary schools, many of the sports teams, for example, let's say soccer, they are determined by where a person lives. So if someone lives around a particular school or in a particular neighborhood, that's where their team is going to be coming from. And so by having practice at after school or at other convenient times and locations, that can be very helpful. And two, I think we need to think about, again, some creative ways of encouraging kids to participate. Also, I think that we need to think about things like scholarships so that parents know that if they can't afford a registration fee, that perhaps there are some funds that are available to help kids to participate. Now, that does require that cities and counties help to supplement that or that there are donors. But having those types of resources can be so helpful in encouraging kids to participate. and helping families helping families so that their kids can participate in sports and they don't feel like their kids are being excluded. And then we also think about ethnicity, and we want to think about making sure with sports that there is diversity and that all kids are encouraged to play. We know that all kids typically, when we think about, of course, application processes, that there's no one group that, of course, is targeted. That's illegal. But we need to think about the images that we use within brochures that are used in any advertisement, so that kids from diverse backgrounds are being shown, so that all kids know, regardless of their ethnic background, that there are kids like them who are playing. And when we think about diversity, this leads us to think about disability. So when we think about advertisements for different sporting programs, we need to think about having those images representative of not just kids from ethnically diverse backgrounds, but also from different backgrounds that are related to abilities. So we know that there are many different types of strengths and challenges that children have, and it's so important for sporting groups and organizations to have a very welcoming environment and to encourage all kids to participate and play. And I can remember my kids playing soccer, and I remember there being a child who was playing on another team, and that child had a missing leg and had an artificial limb. And it was really amazing to me. And the artificial limb that he had was, it was not one that was very advanced or anything, and it was really great for me to see that, and I loved seeing that, and I thought it was great for my kids to see that, because I will tell you that that kid was better than most of the kids who were playing, and it was amazing for other kids to see what kids who have different abilities and challenges can bring to sports. When we think about sports, it's not just about the physical benefits or cognitive benefits. There are also social benefits. And if we can incorporate diversity and help kids to see that kids of different abilities and strengths and challenges are able to play, this is going to help to prepare them for life, so that they are much more inclusive themselves as they work with and go to school with kids with these different abilities, different strengths and challenges. So, what have you learned so far? As you've learned about physical development that's happening in middle and late childhood, you learned about changes in the brain. You also learned about the positive effects of sports and some of the reasons for a lack of participation in youth sports, and some important things for us to think about as a community. You also learned about some of the current trends regarding being overweight in childhood and some of the negative consequences of having excess weight, and the importance of thinking about interventions and healthy lifestyles. So what are you going to be learning about next? You're going to be learning about Piaget's concrete operational stage of development. You're also going to be learning about information processing research. So you'll be learning about things related to memory, attention, metacognition, and critical thinking. So what's happening in these areas during middle and late childhood. You'll also be learning about language development during this period of time and three main types of communication disorders. You'll learn about different theories of intelligence, and I think this is probably one of the most interesting parts of this particular module. So you'll be learning about the general G theory, you'll learn about Gardner's multiple intelligences, you'll learn about more traditional ways of thinking about intelligence, and then you'll learn about how intelligence is measured and the extremes in intelligence and the concern for bias. You'll also learn about how language and culture influence the typical classroom and how important it is for children who are bilingual to be encouraged to continue to use their native language, that there's great strength in being bilingual. So it's important that they're encouraged to continue to use that native language as they're learning new language, the new language of our country, of English. So you're also going to be learning about common disabilities that happen in childhood or that children have in childhood and the legislation that protects them educationally.